All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's already April 7th, and we have a special treat for you. I'm very excited to share and announce our special guest speaker today, Mr. Kelly G. Richardson. He is an attorney practicing law in California and especially familiar with our territory here in San Gabriel Valley. He is a very special treat for us because he knows our contracts very well. He knows what it's like for us as buyers and sellers agents. And he's come here to talk to us about mold. So I wanted to really give a special introduction to him and thank you all for being here as we really learn about mold and how that impacts our transactions, how to reduce liability. So without further ado, I wanted to give Sylvia Ramos a chance to give him a nice introduction, and we'll bring Kelly on to speak about the mold.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelvin. It's always so nice to have you give some words. I know I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you that are here on Zoom, and I appreciate everyone here in person as well. And I'd like to go ahead and start off by saying that Kelly is not only the attorney that he is, but he's also a personal friend of Mark, myself, and Kelvin, and personal friend to a lot of realtors. And so Kelly and I had the grand opportunity to be able to serve on a committee at CAR for housing. It's a housing committee. And I remember feeling really good. I said, yeah, we're going to win this. We're going to win it. We're going to be the best because I'm with Kelly and I'm going to be sitting with Kelly. So Kelly says, I got this. I do this all the time. Don't worry, Sylvia. I got all the notes. I have everything ready. It's no problem. But I was overthinker. No, I need to prepare. I want to do this. Can I do it? Can I represent? You do it all the time. This is your job. I want to do it. So he helped me prepare, and we did a really good job together because of him. So with that said, you're all here because you're going to invest in yourselves. And that's why you're here. And we have nothing but respect for everybody here that want to invest in themselves. So I'm going to start off by saying, adding Kelly's bio here. He is a co-founder and partner of Richardson and Ober, and am I pronouncing this right? DiNicolo?
DiNicolo.
Oh, DiNicolo.
A good Italian.
A good Italian name. Good. Perfect. Thank you. In practice since 1983, Kelly is known as a devoted and successful trial attorney and advisor to real estate professionals, property and business owners, and common interest developments. Kelly is heavily committed to the real estate profession. He serves as a legal counsel for several Southern California associations and is a member of the Legal Affairs Forum and Homeownership and Investment Housing Committees as well. For more than 20 years, Kelly was a GRI faculty member, teaching GRI coursework on risk management, construction, development issues to hundreds of realtors annually. Kelly is a popular lecturer and to the associations of realtors. Sorry, my eyes are a little fuzzy again. Professional real estate organizations and major brokerages, and has authored numerous articles on real estate law and local and national business and trade publications. He is a licensed real estate broker, and he periodically consulted as an expert witness on the standard care of real estate professionals. Please join me in giving Mr. Richardson a proper welcome. I would not be happy by not saying we're an agency that cares and an agency with a lot of heart.
Can everyone please silence your phones and mute yourself if you're on Zoom? Thank you. Take this moment. We don't want any distractions. All right, Kelly, take it away.
So now will I be able to see the slides?
I'll bring up your slides.
Awesome,
yep.
Thanks. Oh, yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to bring up Kelly's slides. He asked for, I got to make him a co-host actually really fast. All right. All right, we got your slides going,
Great.
Kelly.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks everybody for your patience as we worked our way through internet problems and connectivity problems and mechanical problems and oh my God. And of course, here I am. Well, you've got food. I'm going to talk about what an appetizing subject, mold, right? All right. One of the things I want to add that Sylvia in her very, very kind introduction, I am very, very happy to be following my longtime friend, Dave Freeman, and I'm now the legal counsel for the Arcadia board as well. So I'm really, really happy. I've been with PFAR 20 years. I feel very old when I say that, 20 years. And this is my first year with Arcadia. So really, really happy about that. So let's launch into this.
Right.
Yeah, why isn't this working for me?
So those two screens to share, was it the PowerPoint or this one?
Maybe it's the other one. Because it should be advancing. We'll make sure that. So as we launch into this, and the next slide is going to be some slices of bread. So what I want to do for the next 55 minutes or so is tell you a story that honestly nobody else is telling you about the dreaded toxic mold. You've heard about it. People are scared about it. Tenants want to break their leases because of it. New home buyers threaten to sue the seller and you because of it. Homeowners that have plumbing leaks want to sue their homeowners association for that, and on it goes. What happened there? So it's almost like I'm showing this.
It is advancing.
Yeah, so I should be seeing that, right? That's weird. So anyways, we're going to hopefully get this synced. The folks online will be able to see this, or I guess I can turn around a lot. So, before the year 2000, when we heard about mold, this is what we knew about mold, right? You had some bread, you had a piece of bread with some mold on it. What did you do? Did you call the police? Did you call the hospital? You threw the piece of bread away, right? That's what I did. And I'll admit I buy more cheese than I need. And so I have a big, massive block of cheddar, and sure enough, you have some mold on it. And so what do? Do you call the police when you see that? You take a knife and you cut it off, right? Well, the whole world changed. Oh, thank you. Did that do it? Yeah. The whole world changed for us in, it's interesting.
I'm not sure if it's reading your sticker, so I'll push for it if you want to say click.
Yeah, or I can just do it that way.
I just need to think.
So what happened? Well, mold is not only not new. If you have a science background, you'll know that mold actually goes back apparently millions of years. It's one of the very earliest life forms that we have on the planet. And mold is actually in the Bible. And if you go to one of these seminars of one of these mold experts who wants to tell you how dangerous and terrifying mold is, one of the first things they do is they pull out, of all things, the Old Testament. And so in the book of Leviticus, which is very early on in the Old Testament, they pull out these verses from chapter 14 of the book of Leviticus. And the highlighted verses, basically, this is what they're telling you. They're saying that, well, look, mold is so bad that even back in the ancient days of the Old Testament, God told the Israelites, hey, if there's mold, it's a plague. See the word plague up there on the first bullet point, right? And if you can't fix all the mold, then you may have to actually tear down the house. Look at the next verse. This is a straight quote from the Bible. This isn't Kelly Richardson. And it says that it's a destructive mildew and the house is unclean. And so if you can't get rid of all the mold, you've got to actually tear down the house. So I'm not meaning to make fun of the Bible, heavens no. But I'm telling you, this is what the mold people are doing to our customers, to our clients, to our neighbors, to our friends. They're bringing out all these cannons to scare people. So let's go on. Here is one of the all-star mold things. Oh my goodness, it's working. It just clicked. I think we're good now. Yes. Okay. So the famous mold of all is the Stachybartus chartarum. That is sort of the all-star evil monster of mold. Here are some photographs of it. It's black spots. You hear people telling you this is actually very similar to the poison botulism. If you have certain kinds of food that go bad in the can, they can turn into botulism, and which is a point. Well, Stachy makes infinitesimal amounts of a byproduct that apparently is very similar to the botulism poison. So Stachy is the most famous, kind of the #1 evil mold of all the molds. And according to the mold industry, here are all the things that it can cause for you. Everything from nausea to nosebleeds to pulmonary hemorrhage, liver damage, cancer, death. And loyalty to the Yankees and Celtics. No, that doesn't, they aren't saying that. That's me because I'm not a Yankees or Celtics fan. But all these other things are not jokes. Above the sports thing, everything else on that list, people are telling your customers and my customers, this is something that toxic mold will do to you. So let's talk about how mold happens. Now, mold happens when you have three things happening. Number one, you have water. Water that doesn't dry out quickly enough, and it becomes in contact with an organic material. Organic meaning it's a carbon-based material. Now, what do we have all around us in this room? Drywall, right? What's on the outside of this drywall? Paper, which is wood pulp. So it's basically pre-digested wood, right? Very soft. And so if that stays wet for a while, the mold that's in the air, and I have bad news for all of us, even you watching, there's mold where you're sitting. There are spores swirling. In fact, here, I'm swirling about mold spores right now by moving my hands. I'm not kidding you. That's a scientific fact. Mold is wherever all of us are. It's part of our natural environment. You can't get rid of it without taking ridiculous measures, okay? Just like it's elite. Yeah, it's worse than COVID because mold ain't gonna go away. So when you have moisture and something that's made of wood or paper, and it doesn't have a chance to dry out and it has just a moderate temperature, that's like a little petri dish, a little laboratory for mold to grow. And what do we build our houses and offices out of now? Drywall. So that's what causes mold. Sometimes in a coastal environment, in the beach areas, if you don't clean your shower regularly, you'll see mold grow on the tile grout because there's little soap residue. Well, that's also an organic material, and the mold will eat the soap. Nobody's dying. And before 2000, when the mold scare started, what did all of us do? We took a sponge and some Tilex and we scraped it off. But all that changed in 2000. So why do we have so much talk about mold now if it's such an old thing? Well, in the 70s, we started changing over from plaster walls to drywall. Now, in our older homes, like we have here in the San Gabriel Valley, we still have lots of plaster interiors. Well, plaster is cement. Plaster isn't something mold can grow on because it's concrete, basically. It's a cementitious material. We switched to drywall because it's so much easier to build with, right? You cut it, you nail it, you mud it, boom, and it's easy to repair. So that's one big thing. The other factor is that, quite honestly, in California at least, we have had a very low level of quality control in construction during the 70s and 80s and certainly into the 90s. And so we had a lot more water leaks happening, and we had water leaks happening into homes where there was an environment that mold could grow. And so these days, if your home is built in this really in the 70s or later, you know it's drywall, not plaster, unless you paid a heck of a lot of money. So that's another factor. And another thing that caused this mold explosion in the last 22 years is there's been a new awareness of mold's impact upon people's health. There have been lawyers and consultants and mold experts advertising all over the place on the alleged effects of mold. And that's kind of what brings me here today, because that led to a panic. And here's how they panic you and me and our clients. The first thing they do is they called it toxic mold. Now, wait a minute. If mold's been around for millions of years, why is it called toxic mold? Well, Mr. Richardson, it's because mold gives off unhealthy byproducts that if you eat them, you will get sick. So I guess then we're all toxic people? Because, not to get graphic, but we all give off things each day that people should not eat. So toxic. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's the new generation. That is literally what the mold people did. They started calling these things mycotoxins. They said it's toxic. And then in 1999, this was the first glimmer of this mold panic. The World Health Organization, WHO, wrote a report about so-called mold and how it made animals sick. But it was primarily talking about cows or horses eating moldy hay. It wasn't talking about mold in the air swirling around you and me, okay? People literally eating animals, not people, eating mold hay. So that was in 1999. Then what happened is we started having claims arising around 2000 of people saying they were getting sick from having exposure to mold. And then that led to the ultimate, which is in the last 20 years, we've heard stories. Many of you probably could share stories of people you knew who had to live in a hotel for weeks and weeks, or even in a tent in the backyard because their house was not safe due to toxic mold. So that's been the panic. So here's how the panic happens. This is an actual cover story from the New York Daily News, September 10, 2001. The day before a very bad day for America. And what was the front screaming headline? It's not just we've got mold, we've got killer mold, okay? Killer mold, oh good God. Now, by the way, what happened in 2000 between the WHO report and this explosion of panic, there's a story that apparently some youngsters in the Ohio River Valley were playing in moldy hay and they got sick. And one of the speculations was maybe it was the mold in the hay that made them ill. Okay, so that was another thing. Oh, look, we got kids getting very ill. So by the year 2001, now what happened in 2001? Do you remember what happened in the year 2000? 1999, December 31st. What was the panic that was freaking us out around the world? Y2K, exactly, Y2K. New Year's Eve, 1999 to 2000, the world will stop, everything will break, we can't microwave our popcorn anymore. Remember all that? Yeah. And then remember what happened the next morning? Nothing. We had a parade in Pasadena. That was, yeah, right? Okay. So we just finished the Y2K panic and this thing exploded. It's like the panic of the year. And so this was an actual headline from the New York Daily News. Oh, I'm not done though. Here's another headline from another publication. This is the New York Times Magazine. I mean, these are big publications. Again, cover story. And the heading is lurking, choking, toxic mold. And look at the woman in the spacesuit there in the house, right? This is the kind of stories that have been going around for now 21 years. But there's more. These are actual advertisements that you can find on the internet. I like the one on the left. It's so heartbreaking, isn't it? Toxic mold, our family's story. And then we have people saying you've got to have signs. If you had a water leak in this house or in this apartment, oh my goodness, you've got to post a sign because if somebody goes in there, they could die because it's toxic mold. So we have these kind of signs that people are putting up. Oh, but there's more. Here's some other advertisements. And I'm going to show you the all-time mold ad or sign. I think it's the next slide. It's my absolute favorite. Oh, no. This is, I have two favorites. This is the first one. This is an actual advertisement from a mold company, folks. I didn't do this. Look at everything they say toxic mold causes. Immune problems, liver problems, reproductive problems, skin problems, whatever problem you have, apparently mold caused it. And of course, death. This is what our clients are reading. And this, I think now, maybe this is this is a news story, now 2016. This is from the UK Daily Mail. Look at this, in England, a mom finds deadly mold in a hidden room in the house. Deadly mold. All right, and then here's the all-timer, I love this. This is an actual ad. Look at this little angel. She doesn't know danger yet. Don't you want to keep her safe from toxic mold? Does that just, right? Don't you want to start crying, right? We've got to protect our babies. We've got to get rid of the toxic mold. Yeah, this is what our clients are seeing even today. And there are people out there making lectures and educational videos. And what are they all designed to do? They're designed to convince you that you need the mold expert, okay? So that's the battle we're fighting. What has happened over the last 21 years because of the panic? Costs have gone through the roof. Water claims that used to be a few $1,000s are now tens of thousands of dollars. Contractors are scaring the devil out of tenants and residents in buildings. And now we have this whole explosion of a consulting area We've all heard you got to call a mold expert. You got to get mold tests, except almost no state even recognizes anything as an actual mold expert. Certainly not the state of California. We have licenses for everything, right? Guess what? There's no such thing in California as a licensed mold consultant. They are self-described. Would you like to join with me? And tomorrow we'll start our mold consulting business, because we don't need any license to do it. We can declare ourselves, what was your name? Laura and Kelly's mold consulting business. I just want to announce that tomorrow, Sylvia's gonna invest. Thank you. You better ask Mark. But Laura and I are gonna literally, that is it. There is nothing. So, and what comes out of all this is lawsuits. If you've got a tenant, you've got a buyer, you've got a homeowner who's terrified that their life, their children's life, remember the baby, is in danger, of course, what do? They call my brothers and sisters, and they file lawsuits because they think they're protecting themselves, they're protecting their family, and then we're off to the races. So the next thing I want to talk about, let's see, here we go. So here are some charts just showing this is from the insurance industry. They've been tracking as the mold explosion started in 2000, 2001. Look at how the average water claims in California started jumping. And there are some reasons why these claims jump as much as they do. Let's see, there we go. Here's another tracking of average water claim costs. Things have gone high. Now, who are they suing? I got ahead of myself. Who are they suing? Well, about half the lawsuits in the United States for toxic mold cases are actually against the insurance company. You know, one thing that the media didn't tell all of you back in the 2001 to 2007 period, when you heard about Ed McMahon and Aaron Brockovich and all these famous people fighting these $1 million mold lawsuits, what they didn't tell you is that most of those lawsuits for millions of dollars were for so-called insurance bad faith. They weren't against the owner of the property. They were trying to get punitive damages against the insurance company for refusing to pay for the repairs of the mold. People weren't suing and getting money for dying from mold, okay? But that's very boring. That doesn't get in the news. Who else is being sued? Well, your homeowner associations, about 20% of them, your builders, 20%, and the former owners, your and my clients, 10% of these lawsuits are against the sellers of property. All right, so, thank you. Thank you very much. So now what did the state of California do in response to all of this? Well, of course, our legislature, they're very busy. We have a full-time legislature in California. They're always looking for things to do. So in 2001, we had, ta-da, the Toxic Mold Protection Act of 2001. It is still on the books. Senate Bill 732 was passed very quickly. What did it do? Well, it was a study bill. And what it said is that the Department of Health, California Department of Public Health, is supposed to develop what's called permissible exposure limits or levels, PELs, regarding all the different molds. But 21 years now later, we still don't have this law complied with. There are no recognized PELs in California for Stachybotrys, Aspergillus, Cladosporum, and all the other molds that if you look at a mold report, you will see. When you look at all those numbers on the mold report, they don't mean anything because there is no established standard of how many spores of mold gets to a level where it's considered unhealthy or unsafe. So why didn't the California Department of Public Health do something about this? Well, there's a reason for this. Now, by the way, the Center for Disease Control, have you heard of the CDC? Anybody heard of the Center for Disease Control? Right. Who else have we been listening to the last 2 years, right? Right. CDC, like we're all CDC junkies, aren't we? Thanks to COVID. All right. Well, the CDC, their current statement on this is that there is no standard on what kind of mold is considered unhealthful. So what happened with the Toxic Mold Protection Act? Well, let's see what they said to the California legislature on this. There we go. In 2005, 4 years after that Toxic Mold Protection Act was passed, this is a public document. The handouts that I gave you today, you can pull this up by Google or through the links I've given you. What did they say? Well, they said that they can't come up with permissible exposure limits. And so because of all the different problems, the science community doesn't agree. on which kind of mold and how much mold is considered bad. And it's a very fragile science. If we did a very scientific test of the mold in this room right this second, if everybody held their breath, we turned off all the fans, we took an air sample. 5 minutes later, we turn the air conditioning back on, we open the doors, maybe we turn on a sink or something. 5 minutes later, that is all that it takes to completely change the mold level in a room. Any air movement at all completely changes the information. Opening a door or window, any fresh air coming in completely changes the information. The mold level in rooms in your home is changing all day long, all night long. So at what point do you actually take the measurement, and which measurement means something? Morning, night, noon? Nobody knows. So this is what they told the legislature. 4 years later, said, I'm sorry, California legislature, we can't establish this. We can't come up with a scientifically justified level. Now, then they followed it up a few years later, and I think I also gave you the link for this in your materials. In 2008, they issued a public follow-up to the legislature. And once again, they said, for these and other reasons detailed in the report, science-based PELs, permissible exposure limits for indoor molds cannot be established at this time. So that's where it sits today in 2022. This is still the current status. There is no recognized standard of how many mold spores are considered unhealthful and what kind. So why are people getting mold tests if nobody knows what they mean? Because people are selling them. Here's what the California Department of Public Health says. Here's what they say about testing. Look at it in red. Pretty clear. We recommend against measuring indoor microorganisms or using the presence of specific microorganisms to determine the level of health hazard or the need for urgent remediation. Now, I added the red, okay? But this is an exact cut and paste from the California Department of Public Health. Wow. Then why are we doing mold tests? Because people are telling our clients they have to do it. Here's what the CDC says. This is a longer quote. You can find this on the internet right now. If you go to the CDC website, you type in mold, you'll see this statement. I checked this just a couple weeks ago. Standards for judging what is an acceptable, tolerable, or normal quantity of mold have not been established. Pretty clear, right? About as clear as it can get. The EPA is also weighed in on this. Here's what the EPA says. Testing is unnecessary. So here's the problem we have. Let me just get real. If I haven't been blunt enough, I'm going to get even more blunt. So if the California Department of Public Health, the EPA, and the Center for Disease Control all say testing is unnecessary, why is it our clients are spending millions of dollars a month throughout the United States on testing? It's because the EPA and the CDC and the California Department of Public Health don't advertise. And they're up against a whole juggernaut of industry trying to sell this product. Yeah, your question, go ahead.
I'm just curious, Steve, because you see lots of people sue the insurance company, right? You said in the previous chart, like 50% goes to the insurance company sue, and then 10% goes to the the homeowner. Is there any results that actually, because you can see the measurement, the result of the testing, and then that means you can't have the good judgment. So even if you sue, those people who sued before, they're not going to be any successful lawsuits. They fail.
Many of the lawsuits alleging personal injury from mold have failed. A very close friend of mine spent many years defending farmers insurance from so-called toxic mold claims. And the main expert that used to push these claims was thoroughly discredited, even in a public case by the California Court of Appeal. But nevertheless, whether or not these go to court for the mold itself, they're pushing your clients into tearing open walls, tearing out cabinets, and turning a $2,000 leak repair into a $22,000 leak repair. That's the problem. They're scaring our clients, and they are yelling louder than the California and the United States government. So that's why I'm like, I think I'm the only guy I've ever heard of. I'm like the John the Baptist out there. I'm the only person who's spreading the news that you're being sold and our clients are being sold a bill of goods. They're being lied to. Now, I'm not saying that all mold companies are evil people. Some of them believe what they're selling. But I guarantee you their bosses aren't telling them what I'm telling you. And this information isn't hard to find. So here's what the scientific community said. Now, remember, the mold explosion started in 2000 and 2001. The National Academy of Sciences, I mean, the best and the brightest in our country, wrote a hardbound book in 2004 called, really sexy title, Damp Indoor Spaces and Health. That's the best they could come up with. The point of the book was to study what are the documented, scientifically valid impact of indoor mold on human beings. And here is the press release that they issued on May 25th, 2004. I guarantee you didn't hear about this, okay? It got no play. But here's the actual press release. You can still find it on Google. What did they say? The available evidence does not support an association between indoor mold and the wide range of other health complaints beyond simple respiratory irritation. So what in 2004 to today has the scientific mainstream community said about so-called toxic mold? That if you have a sensitive respiratory system, if you have asthma, if you have emphysema, then it can make you very ill. You know what else can make you very ill if you have asthma or emphysema? A very dusty room, a spring day with lots of pollen blowing across, where you're breathing. That can send you to the hospital. I have an uncle who's my age, and when we were kids, he had really bad asthma. And a couple times they had to rush him to the hospital because he couldn't breathe. Well, it wasn't toxic mold, it was pollen. So I don't mean to make fun. There are some people, God bless them, that are very sensitive, and toxic mold or dust or pollen can really harm them. But you see, the mold is really on the same level as pollen or dust. Doesn't sound quite as scary when you think about it that way, does it? Because what do we do for those people? Well, we put air filters in their rooms. We try to be careful on windy days. And the people with kids or loved ones that have those kind of conditions, they've learned how to deal with them. But the medical community, I want to say it again, because it is absolutely, you could find it all over, all the reliable governmental sources have said that mold is a documented respiratory irritant, sneezing, coughing, maybe a runny nose. It's not causing miscarriages or cancer or brain damage or who knows whatever else, the heartbreak of psoriasis. It's not doing that, okay? It's a respiratory irritant. So if your family has mold and nobody has sensitive respiratory system and nobody's sneezing or having a runny nose, then the mold isn't affecting you at all. So this was 2004. Another quote from this press release, and then I'll move on. And again, you can see this in the links I gave you. Even though the available evidence does not link mold or other factors associated with building moisture to all the serious health problems that some attribute to them, okay? They go on to say, well, yeah, excessive dampness is not good for your health. It's not the mold, it's excessive dampness, okay? So this is the National Academy of Sciences talking. This is not State Farm, Farmers Allstate, Liberty Mutual talking. This is the United States government, same people that brought us superstar Fauci, okay? That's what they're telling us. But again, they're not advertising. They're not going out and putting ads in the magazines saying, hey, while you're listening to the mold consultants, why don't you listen to us? So here you are. So I'm giving you information that I can promise you, when you share it, nobody will have heard this before because they're hearing all the salespeople. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, the last quote I just put in there in boldface. The committee found sufficient evidence to conclude that mold gives you asthma symptoms, coughing, wheezing, okay? That's what mold does. It makes you cough, it makes you wheeze, it makes you sneeze. Just like being in your garage when you haven't swept in a while, right? Okay, so there we go. So that's what the scientific community has been telling us since 2004. They also, by the way, noted that they haven't found any reliable studies that have said anything to the contrary. All right. So there was another study after that, also ignored the next year by a guy named Dr. Will Boggs. He issued a study in October of 2005. And once again, he said there's little evidence to support the existence of the so-called toxic mold syndrome. This is a guy out of Portland from the Oregon Health Sciences University. Again, none of us heard this. The only reason I found this was researching on the internet a number of years ago. It's like, wow, why doesn't anybody read this stuff? Well, there's the people that profit from this don't want you to see this, bottom line, because then you won't spend money on them. So that was another report that was ignored. Again, 2005. Here's what the WHO said. Now, remember, in 1999, they wrote this report talking about animals eating moldy hay and concerned about that not being good for them. Here's what they said 10 years later. They issued a massive 228-page report. You can download it on the internet. I have a copy. If you're having trouble sleeping, I will email it to you and you'll sleep like a baby after about 3 pages because it's very scientific stuff. Okay. But here's a quote from page 81. I did flip through this enough to give you this quote. Basically, they said that the evidence is not sufficient to connect mold and any other serious health effect. Okay. So now we're not even just United States. This is the WHO saying that mold is a sneezing, coughing issue. That's what it is. And that's all it is. So state of California, United States government, WHO. Who wants to believe those guys, right? Why should we believe them? What do they know? Okay. But the mold consultants will get you really scared. Here's the current statement from 2011. This is still current from the CDPH, California Department of Public Health. The known health risks, again, according to the state of California, are sneezing and wheezing and things like that. So that's what they're all telling us. That doesn't sound like what you and I and our friends have been hearing from the mold industry, is it? No. Toxic. Don't you love your children? Do you want to die? How many times if you had 3 hours, I could start telling you story after story of HOAs or homes that have been closed escrow where the homeowner has a contractor come in to check things out and they go find a water leak. They open up the drywall. They see some speckles inside that formerly wet area. And they say, you've got toxic mold, everybody out now. Like we're talking about radioactivity or cyanide gas or something. And then people get scared. And then what happens? People are frightened into spending more money than they should. So let me go to the next slide, that little bit of delay. There we go. So when people are scared, who do they go after? Well, they go after their landlord. They go after their condo association. They go after their sellers, and they go after you because you're supposed to protect them from everything. Realtors know everything. If anything goes wrong, you must have let me down, Laura. Why didn't you know about that mold in the garage?
No, come to my consulting company, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that's right. We'll in our new, go to Laura and Kelly's company, we'll explain the whole thing. But that's what happens is, what do scared people do in our society? They sue, okay? And they're looking for somebody to blame. So now let me talk to you about what do we do? Now, let's talk about a whole new approach for our clients in dealing with mold situations. So we found mold, Kelly and Laura. What do we do? Well, Laura says, well, the first thing you're going to do is don't panic and don't let your client panic. Remember, let's be sympathetic. They have been told for 20 years, this is a deadly, deadly thing. So, but we've got to help them stay calm. And we certainly don't want to play part of the panic. Hey, it's a water leak, okay? Find the leak and fix the leak. That's the most important thing. If there's a pipe that's squirting water, turn off the pipe, patch the pipe. Then we're going to clean up the water. We're going to dry it up, okay? And once the water intrusion is fixed, when they tell you, oh, now you need a mold test because there might be mold, or I saw some speckles on the bottom of the wall. No, do not test. No, no, no. It's a waste of money. And it's worse than a waste of money because, again, it's one of the main things that gets the tenant or the property owner terrified because they see these scientific numbers and these very scary sounding mold names cladosporum. That sounds fatal. And so immediately they say, well, what have I got to do? I got to hire a mold consultant, and maybe I do need to live in a hotel for a while. Maybe I need to go check in the San Gabriel Hilton until my house is safe, right? Don't test. They have mold there too? They do. Yes, that's the rumor I heard. Yes, they do. If you're on the planet Earth, there's mold. Maybe there's a place in Antarctica where there might not be some mold. I don't know. That's an interesting question. So don't test. The next thing you do when you stopped the water and you started drying it up is figure out the scope of repair. Now, this is a key turning point here, okay? What is the scope of repair? According to the leading health authorities, not the mold industry, the star repair element, it's very, very high tech. Are you ready? Okay, here's the repair element. The star repair element is, who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? Actually, the number one way to deal with mold infestation is just what we used to do before the mold explosion. We take a rag, we take the bleach, we dilute the bleach, no straight bleach. You dilute the bleach in the water, and you take that diluted bleach water mixture, and then you wipe the mold off. Wipey, wipey, wipey. Dish rag goes in the wash, you're done. So let me show you some of the repair methods according to the New York City Department of Public Health. They are the leading source of, there we go. So here's what the EPA says about repairing mold yourself. In most cases, sampling for mold, again, is unnecessary. Since there are no limits, there's no reason to test for mold. So that's the first thing. We're not going to, now there's actually a video. This is new. The EPA has a really cool little video. It's about 3 minutes long. And it basically is telling you why you don't need to test for mold. So it's free, it's public, your and my taxes paid for it. It's on the California Department, no, it's this is on the California Department of Public Health website. So you can all find this. Have your clients watch that before they spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on the whole mold test thing. Because by the way, what they're gonna do is once you get one test, then they do a bunch of repairs. Oh, we need another test, see how we're doing. And then we think we're all done. Oh, let's do another test to make sure everything's clear. I have an HOA in Pasadena that got way into this mold thing before they called me. And by the time I started talking to them, they were in this thing for tens of thousands of dollars. And the water was not even inside the condo. It was underneath in the crawl space. And this poor HOA had 3 rounds of so-called mold remediation and 3 rounds of testing. And guess what the company said after the 3rd round of testing and mold remediation? You need some more. I mean, you got to laugh at it. It's so bad, but that's what they're doing out there. So here's what the EPA says. How do you clean this? Well, first act quickly because mold will continue to grow until it dries out. So if you're going to clean something up, if it's 10 square feet, so what's 10 square feet? Okay, 10 square feet is a little bit more than 3 feet by 3 feet. Okay, that's a pretty big, that's this. Okay, that's a pretty big patch of moldy wall. If you didn't catch it when it got that big, there's some other problem in your family, right? Okay, so if it's that big, what does the EPA tell us? Well, in most cases, they tell us you can do the cleanup yourself. You don't need to hire a mold consultant in a spacesuit. So no, I'm sorry, buddy. We don't need you anymore. We don't need the spacesuits. Most mold situations we can clean up ourselves without mold consultants, without tearing cabinets off the walls. Oh my goodness. So we don't need you. So what do we do? Well, this is the New York City Department of Public Health seems to be the leading resource that I've been able to find in the United States for mold cleanup, okay? What they say is that if it's 10 square feet or less, basically wear some gloves, maybe wear a mask so you don't inhale any dust. Wipey, wipey, that's it. You don't have to clear everybody out of the building. You don't have to put up sheets and make a containment area. That's all you have to do is clean it up yourself. What about a bigger area? What about, there's the summary. Okay, so 10 square feet or less, you don't need an expert. You can do it yourself. You can have your maintenance person do it. You wipe it up. That's what they tell us. All right. So now let's go to a bigger area. Let's go beyond 10 square feet to a larger area of mold. There we go. Now we're looking at 10 to 30 square feet. So 30 square feet would basically be one whole sheet of drywall. A whole sheet of drywall is 32 square feet. So pretty much a whole sheet. So if you have a whole section of a wall that's covered with mold, well, then what do we do? Now do we call the mold expert? No, actually what they say is that you can have your maintenance staff do that too. You just have them wear a mask, protect their eyes and goggles, protect their hands. Now you might want to separate the work area with some sheeting just so that the dust from that area doesn't spread around, right? And then what do? Well, you take a sprayer, spray a little misty water on it to make the dust settle down. And then what do? Again, wipey, wipey. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me wipey, wipey is all we need? We don't need to hire a mold expert to come out with a team of 5 people? Yeah, no, that's true. You don't. So a larger infestation over 30 square feet. So if you have like a whole room that's got mold, what they're saying then is, well, then you might want to call a consultant. Here's the problem I have in this though, is how do we figure out a consultant in that industry that I trust? I've not yet found anybody, because if it's somebody who's trustworthy, the first thing they should say is, yeah, wow, you got mold all over here. Not, let's go test. I can see it. I don't need a test. Okay. It's mold. We're going to clean it up. How do we do it? So you should be having the expert tell you what should be done. Do we have to throw out all the drywall? Seriously? Maybe so, but have the expert tell you that, and then don't have the emergency restoration contractor do it for you. ServPro, 24-hour restoration, all those companies are wonderful. They're the people that, God bless them, come out at 2 a.m. when there's a flood of sewage and stuff, right? And they get paid a lot extra for that. But what my clients and your clients are doing is they're calling those folks and they're doing all this emergency work in the middle of the day. And they're tearing stuff out and they're charging 2 and 3 times what another contractor would charge on a bidding competitive basis, okay? So the emergency contractors, no, have a regular contractor bid it. You're gonna find the price starts going down. Another thing that the emergency contractors do as part of the mold panic is, when in doubt, I tear it out. That's it. Let's tear those cabinets off the walls because there might be mold behind them. The most expensive thing in that kitchen. Oh, we're going to tear it out. Let's start tearing the drywall off the walls because, you know, Laura, you and I might find some mold inside the wall. So let's go find it. Seriously? We're going to do a mold hunt? Why? If it's basically the equivalent of dust, why are we doing that? Why are we going to just release more dust in the house, right? Because mold is simply a respiratory irritant. So by opening up the wall, you're actually making the problem worse, okay? By the way, little side note, folks. The other thing about the whole mold industry is because there's no recognized government resource for them, because they're not doing what the government says needs to be done anyway. What they did was when the mold explosion started happening is they took an asbestos abatement protocol. Totally different thing. Asbestos is not mold. Asbestos can really make you sick after a long time of breathing in those fibers because those fibers stay in your lungs forever. And ultimately it can cause lung cancer. That is also established by the medical community. You ask the EPA, you ask the CDC, they'll tell you, you don't want to be breathing asbestos, okay? So when you have an asbestos environment, what do? Well, then they put on the spacesuits, then they put on the special masks, they have the special filters, they seal off that room very tightly with sheets, okay? It's a containment, they call it a containment area. The reason you do that is you don't want to have those darn asbestos fibers spreading through the rest of the building, the house, the condo, whatever, okay? What they did in 2000 and 2001, 2, and 3 is they basically took and they cut and pasted the asbestos abatement protocols and called it a mold abatement protocol. And so if you read closely, a lot of these mold recommendations, they sound very similar if you've ever read an asbestos report to the asbestos report. It's as big a difference as from a bloodthirsty tiger to a little possum. They're just not the same, not even close, but it's super expensive. Okay. So I've seen these mold reports say that you need to go dry clean all your clothes. You've got to wash all your dishes. You've got to reupholster your furniture. You may need to tear your tear your carpet out? Yeah, that's the kind of things your clients are getting told. So be aware that the mold consultants, they've created their own protocols. And it's none of them are sanctioned by any government. It's just this mold industry has done so. Okay, so let's talk about the experts, the so-called experts. Most states, including California, have zero licensing of these experts. It is purely an industry that has created their own trade associations, and they have created a protocol. And the #1 trade association for mold is the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, the IICRC. The #1 mold abatement protocol is the IICRC S520. And if you read the S520 protocol closely, you'll see that it assumes as a given that in every mold situation, there will always be who? A member of their group. There will always be a mold expert. No matter what kind of infestation, how small it is, you always have the mold expert. Well, that's really nice. By the way, the IICRC is not owned by shareholders. It's owned by trades that actually do that work. So it's kind of like if we all got together and formed a trade association to convince everybody that you needed Dynasty Realty more than any other realty, and we had certifications, we call it the Dynasty certification, and all of a sudden everybody at San Gabriel Valley goes, wow, Laura has the Dynasty certification. That's amazing. Well, we just created it. Well, that's what the mold industry did. That's what the mold. So Sylvia, I may give you an idea. I don't know. But the Dynasty, I've got the Dynasty credential. That's what the mold industry did. That's exactly it. So when somebody looks you in the face and goes, oh, the S520, you've got to comply with that. That's the industry standard. It's the mold industry standard. And it's an industry that for the most part is bleeding us all dry. Is that blunt enough? And I'm being recorded. I know I'm being recorded. Okay. So any mold people that are watching this, you call me up.
Would you say consultant attorney?
Yeah. I wrote on mold a couple of years ago. Some of you may know I have a very boring newspaper column on the weekends. I've been writing for 17 years now throughout Southern California, San Diego to Santa Barbara. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a 2-part series on the myths of toxic mold. And I got the most angry emails from how many people? 2 people. And they were both mold advocates. Not a single scientist, not a single doctor, not a single lawyer said, how dare you, sir, you're doing the, no. 2, and then I dialogued with, I said, I'd be happy to talk with you some more. Well, here's the documentation. And all the documentation were television news stories. I don't consider TV news documentation, folks. I'm sorry. I'm a little more rigorous on my science. So here's what the Mold Inspection Institute says about mold. This is a cut and paste. None of these words are Kelly Richardson's words. What is the Mold Inspection Institute telling its prospective members? Well, mold has been called the new asbestos because it can lead to so many health problems. A mold inspection service can become a highly profitable new business. Hey, the saying in the mold world is mold is gold, okay? And where's the gold coming from? It's coming from you and me and our clients. So here's quickly as I start wrapping up, here's how a little leak becomes a major financial hemorrhage, okay? Step 1, of course, delay. One of the problems is that an HOA board or a building manager or the tenant, everybody's arguing about whose fault it is. And so we don't stop the leak quickly enough. We don't clean the water and dry it up quickly. The quicker you dry it up, the less chance you're gonna have not only mold, but dry rot, okay? So we don't wanna delay, because if you delay, it just gets worse. Unnecessary testing, that also drives up the cost. You pay for something that means nothing and scares the devil out of the poor homeowners. And once they get scared, now they're gonna do things out of fear, not out of reason. And then what do? They overuse the emergency restoration contractor. Okay, ServPro, maybe we should tear out the cabinets. Why can't we wait and get a quote from a regular contractor if you really want to tear out your cabinets, right? Lastly, no competitive bids. See, when you're going with the emergency contractor, you don't realize how much more you're spending. But when you slow down and you go get some bids, all of a sudden you're going to find, oh, it's a lot less expensive. So that's how it becomes so expensive. You've heard it said that insurance never covers mold. Well, that's kind of true, and it's kind of not true. Every insurance policy I've ever seen that covers property damage excludes mold, and it excludes fungus, excludes dry rot, okay? But if somebody sues you, they sue your landlord, they sue your HOA board, they sue the seller, and one of the issues is mold, usually the liability side will defend you. And I've had many, many times when somebody's been really upset about water seepage, including mold, and the property insurance side says, well, we're not going to pay for the mold cleanup. And I go to the liability side and I said, wait a minute, they've already got a lawyer. They're already getting ready to sue us. So why don't you treat this as a liability claim and write the darn check? It's going to be way cheaper. Well, I thank you for the question. So anyway, don't give up hope. If you have a mold claim against you or your client, your HOA board, whoever, don't give up. You may find that if it gets so far as a lawsuit threat, that you can convince the insurance company to pay that. How do we get out of mold claim lawsuits? Well, there are a couple of strategies. First of all, act decisively. Do not delay. Clean up everything quickly. You can always sort out who's going to pay for it later. Secondly, be compassionate. The person who's screaming at you, terrified for their children, they weren't in this room tonight. They haven't heard what you've heard. They haven't seen what you've seen. So understand, they're legitimately scared. It's not their fault. So be compassionate, don't reject them, but try to be reassuring. And one of the handouts that I gave you was a huge list of all kinds of things. Most of those things you can print out. A lot of them are PDF files that were created by the CDC, the EPA, or the California Department of Public Health for you to share with other people in the general public. And remember, we never worry about copyright if it's from the government, okay? Because we pay for that. All right. So the next thing is find the leak. That is absolutely the most urgent thing. Find the leak, stop the leak, okay? Next, get the repair fixed of the leak. Stop the leak once you find it. And if you do find mold along with other stains and what have you, try to clean it up as soon as you can, because it's just going to get worse, okay? And if you know how to do it the right way, you don't need to spend $20,000 on a mold consultant with spacesuits and containment areas, right? You might get your handyman. Kelly, could you get your jeans on and go wipe up that mold? Yeah, okay, sure, boss.
I'll say no, Laura will.
I'll say, look, my partner Laura will take care of it. Yes, she's much stronger than me. And a lot of times you're going to find that your tenants or your homeowner association residents are reluctant to let you in for the repairs. Now that's a problem, because the longer they stall, the worse the water damage is going to be, right? So it's really, really important to document your request for access. Hey, Kelly, I'm trying to get in your condo. I'm trying to get in your apartment to fix the water damage, and it's just going to get worse. And look, I'm not going to be responsible for the increase of the damage that came just from this delay. You got to do that in writing. A phone call or text isn't going to protect you. That letter will be evidence, okay? And if they still refuse, document it again. Okay, a couple of other tips. No, that's it. That's it. So it's actually, I brought it in less than an hour since we started late. So that's basically what I want to share with you today. If you would like, I will prepare a PowerPoint with all the non-graphic slides, right? I'll take the pictures of the crazy ads. If you'd like me to do that, just let me know and I'll email that to you tomorrow, and then she can share it with all your staff. So I appreciate you listening, and I'd be happy to take any other questions. Yeah, Mark.
Okay. Let's say New Orleans. They always have floods down there. Why aren't they knocking the whole damn town down and people are not dying? So how do insurance claims, they handle that over there in Florida or in New Orleans? Yeah,
The more humid the area, the greater the risk of mold, even in a natural environment. Now, back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of homes in the were built without proper ventilation in their bathrooms. The building codes require that every bathroom with a shower has to have a window or a vent to get the moisture out, okay? Well, for a while there, the builders figured out a cute way to not put the ventilation in. So if you live near the beach, that humidity would almost always result in moldy bathrooms. This is before 2000, before we knew about toxic mold. So, but yeah, the more humid the area, Texas has a lot of mold claims, okay? But a lot of the humid areas too, they're a little bit smarter than we are in California with our drier climate. They know that they've got to be quick on this stuff. But yeah, the more southerly areas, a lot of mold, a lot of problems. I always ask myself, you've been to Venice, Italy? The whole city is sitting in water. Why isn't it the mold capital of the world? It's because they build out of stone. The mold can't grow on stone, but it loves drywall.
That's right.
It loves
That's
drywall.
right. We saw, Mark and I saw the house in Glendora. It was made out of stone and had zero mold, zero termites.
I'll tell you a true story, and then I'll have to take questions. It was in this area, and it was either Temple City or Monrovia. A longtime friend who we had gone to church with for years, they called my wife. And it's funny, when you're a lawyer, people always in there, the friend doesn't call me directly. They always call my wife, and then she asks me the question.
Get your wife's number.
So,
Call Laura.
yeah, exactly. Now, well, now I'm it's her number is going to be on our business card. So my wife says, could you talk to this friend? I guess I could tell you the first name because you wouldn't know her. Marissa, could you call our friend Marissa? I go, what? Yeah. Oh no! Oh no! Anyway, nice, you got me. So I call Marissa because they bought this house and there's something wrong with the Kelly and they haven't moved in and they're kind of freaking out. So I call Marissa. Marissa, what's going on? She says, well, this is their first house. They'd never owned a house. So, you know, like a lot of the houses in our area, it's a existing house, been around 40 years or more. So they bought this house. Yeah, we bought this house. We closed escrow. We're very excited. We went through the house with our contractor just to kind of make some plans before we move in. And there's this one room with wallpaper. And we were pulling off the wallpaper to see what the condition of the wall was and how hard it would be to get. Just, you know, we know not to keep the wallpaper. And behind the wallpaper, there were black speckles. And the contractor said, get out now, that's toxic mold. So they literally, the family of four, son and a daughter, husband and wife, they locked the door and they didn't come back. Now they have a house that they can't live in. So they lived with friends for days and days and days. And when they got desperate enough to call my wife and then me call them, is they had run out of friends to stay with and they were getting ready to do what? They were going to camp in their backyard. So here's how I handled it. I said, Marissa, tell me about what you saw. Told me what I just told you. I said, Marissa, does anybody in the family have asthma? Yeah, our son, he has asthma. When he was in the house, did he have any problems? No, not at all. Headaches, sneezing, coughing? No, nothing. Marissa, move into your house. Keep your boy out of that room. Clean it up. But the most important thing, Marissa, is find the leak because there was a leak in that room somewhere. You need to find the leak so it doesn't keep happening. Okay. And then enjoy your house. Enjoy your house. Enjoy your house. So when you're a lawyer, you get really used to this. I think doctors have the same experiences. When people are sick and you make them well, doctors never get a call back saying, Doc, you're amazing. I'm fine. Right. Lawyers the same way. When we help somebody through a jam, it's very unusual. I do get 2 or 3 cards a year, but that's pretty rare considering all the people I talk to who will say, thanks so much. Everything worked out great. So these people, not that they were ungrateful, but they got on with their lives, right? So a year and a half or so later, I bump into Marissa again. Marissa, how are you and Dave doing? Oh, we're great. How's the house? Oh, it's wonderful. What did you find out? Well, there was a leak over a window. Sure enough, we fixed the leak. Everybody happy, everybody healthy. Yeah, we love our house. You know, so no testing. And this is with an asthma kid in the family. The kid was about 9 years old. This kid with asthma, they enjoyed their house. They moved in, they lived normally. Nobody died, okay? They had a happy life because they just needed somebody to calm them down and say, hey, if everybody's okay, don't worry about it. If everybody's not okay, keep your boy out of the room, right? So that's just one of many, many stories that happens all the time. Contractors, get out now, okay? It's not cyanide gas. So you probably have questions and maybe some folks on Zoom have questions too. I've been mostly looking over the top of you folks, I'm sorry. But anybody have any other questions?
Just a testimony
Yes,
of
ma'am.
what you're saying. I had a client that, because I sell paint also, and they wanted me to go look at their house. So I go look at their house, a mold issue.
Mhm.
I told them the same thing you told them. I said, don't worry about it. Da, da, da. They went and hired a specialist from San Gabriel Valley.
Mhm.
They came out $30,000 later. They convinced them that they had a special vacuum that would contain the mold. They had to sweep the whole house of mold.
Yeah,
And that's how they sold it.
yeah,
And she paid it.
Yeah.
$30,000.
and they probably were grateful. Thank you for protecting me. And what a perfect deal, right? They thank you for spending money they didn't need to spend, right? That'd be like me saying, okay, all of you, do you realize how dangerous it is to buy a house in California? All the legal risks. You need to have a lawyer in each and every home purchase, $5,000 flat fee, just included in every escrow, because it's a dangerous thing. Oh, thank you for protecting me, Kelly. Then I could break up my partnership with Laura. All right, we got a good thing. That's true. We got a good.
And you already have an investor.
Yeah, we have an investor. So yes.
Now, on the APIP, if we saw the house inside, they do have homework to what the home really belongs to.
Just say, looks like mold, and describe where it is. It's okay. I mean, you know, I have lawyers in the last recent years, we've had a lot of cases involving construction defects. I used to do a lot of that. I don't do as much anymore. And the lawyers are so scared about arguments over whether it's mold or something else. They came up with a different name for it. They call it bioorganic growth.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what the last year, like the inspector.
Yeah.
Just say mold. It's okay.
Did you hear that,
It's okay.
According to broker guidance, I did hear from another specialist that says, we're not mold specialists or have a sample in hand to say mold. So if you do want to use the word, you would say agencies in the bathroom, the tile showers, there may be some organic or growth matter on the tiles and grout areas prior to organic agents.
There you go, Kelly.
I didn't use the word bio, but you said organic growth.
Yeah,
Dark substance.
yeah, and you know,
Potentially could be mold, it's fine.
yeah, and Kelvin's right. I mean, but don't worry too much about it. It's some kind of a growth. You don't have to decide why it happened. You don't need to call it minor or major. Maybe someday we'll come back. I'll do an AVID seminar. I do a bullseye seminar. We talk about the AVID part of a deal, which, as you know, all kidding aside, according to Carr, the two most likely sources of lawsuits against you are failure to disclose and failure to do a reasonable inspection. Those are the big two. So maybe sometime Kelvin will crazy enough to have me back, and I'll come earlier and be set up, and we could talk about that. It's be very careful on your AVIDs. Don't use adjectives or adverbs.
Right.
Words like minor, major, serious, hairline. No. Just it's a crack. It's not a hairline. It's just a crack. So we'll talk about that maybe in the future.
Kelly, what's the difference between mold, mildew, and what's the other one? Fungus?
Okay, what's the difference between mold, mildew, and fungus? Mark asks. In my world, there is no difference, because all of it, if it continues to go, is going to make the house bad. Fungus can turn into dry rot and start eating at the wood, and that's bad, right? Mildew is going to make it smell. There's nothing worse than a mildewed towel, right? So the bottom line is, whether it's fungus, mildew, or mold, it's some type of bioorganic growth. We want to stop it. We want to stop it dead, but we don't need to live in the San Gabriel Hilton unless you just feel like a weekend off. Okay.
Julia had a question for us.
Yes.
Want to share it? Or she asked me, Kelvin, how come when I had a transaction, you recommended me to get a mold sample or test, correct? On one of your,
Yeah, because just the mold.
okay. And so my answer to you is, it depends on what side you're representing. Okay. So I agree with everything that Kelly says in a practical sense, and as a human, as living, and I totally agree. It's just something that you can clean up and bleach, because we've done that on a lot of our flip properties and this and that. But when it comes down to what side you represent, when her situation, I recommended it. And the reason why is because we can make a request for repairs. And we can sweeten the deal and renegotiate and use the fear mongering that the mold professional industry is putting together to get ourselves a buyer better.
This is
deal.
a smart guy.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's strategy, not from fear, but that's a great way to get some leverage for your buyer. I agree completely. The other instance where mold test does make sense, and it's very, very rare, is when somebody continues to have cold-like symptoms. We thought we found the water leak, but for some reason they continue to struggle. Then I would do a moisture test and I do a mold test to see if there's anything, not because the level of mold is significant, but if the level of mold is dramatically different than outside the property or in different rooms, it's different. It might help us find wherever the moisture is seeping in, but it's really the moisture we're trying to find, not the mold.
Now let's play devil's advocate.
Oh, here come the horns.
You told her what to do. You guys got a credit because of it. Now they hire Kelly Richardson, the other side, and say, you show us the mold report.
Well,
The
there's
state-
an independent report.
Well, if Kelvin is able to use this, that's a great strategy. If Kelvin is able to use it to get an agreed repair from the seller, that's a win for your client. Okay. I don't know that I'd make a lawsuit out of it, but like he said, he's not trying for a lawsuit. He's trying to get a little more work for his client, the buyer. Now, if you're the seller and you know what now you all know, you're not going to be very impressed by the mold test anymore.
Right.
But if it's not a client of Dynasty, they may not know. And you might get some more work out of them. That's not bad. So that's really smart. I like that.
We have a question down here.
I go back to the simple thing. Let's say you represent the buyer, I represent the seller. You requesting a mold testing, is paid by the buyer or paid by the seller?
It's negotiable. I think we told them to go, let's go 50-50 on it.
Yeah.
I think that's, I can't remember.
Also, the
No,
seller
no,
can
my case is,
say, cancel
totally
and
different.
can get-
Yours cancel. Cancel.
Her cancel
My
plans.
buyer is really worried too much about some. So she said even the repair is done, so she's still afraid of mold inside the wall, so cannot see. That's why we still this.
Yeah.
Transaction.
Well, canceling the contract is really dangerous because that's where a lot of lawsuits happen. The CRRPA still is very buyer oriented because there's so many ways a buyer can back out, truthfully, right? If the inspection period is still going on, as you know, the buyer can cancel for just about anything. If the inspection period is finished and all the contingencies have been released, then it may be a little trickier to cancel the deal. And there's where you probably want to have a legal consultation. Your client should get some, because you don't want to tell them, oh yeah, let's cancel. Or they say, I want to cancel. You at least want to say to your client in writing, in an email at least, dear client, I know you want to cancel the deal. I recommend you have a legal consultation with the lawyer of your choice before you make that decision, because sometimes the cancellations are not accepted. Now, is your client always going to go to a lawyer? No, in fact, most of the time they're not. But you have that email now where you gave them the smart advice, right? And that's your obligation. Your obligation is very similar to mine. We tell our clients the truth. We give them good advice. They don't always follow it, but we document our advice. Yeah.
I love it. So we definitely will invite you back for the risk management disclosure AVID training, right, Sylvia? We need this. Any other questions before we end with Kelly today?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for making the time to be here. On behalf of Coldwell Banker Dynasty, I know it's a big win for our office to have you here in person, and I know that a lot of other agencies, if they find out, they're going to be super jealous of us.
Well, you're very kind. Thanks, everybody. You've been a great audience. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.